Sia lodato Gesù Cristo e avanti con Maria. Carissimi, vengo a darvi appuntamento dopo questa pausa estiva indimenticabile nella quale ci hanno acquisito Piccola Nazareth, ma noi siamo sopravvissuti perché ci accompagna la Madonna per un appuntamento imperdibile. Domenica 6 ottobre a Milano alle ore 14:30 ci ritroviamo, per quanti lo vorrete, per un momento di preghiera. L'ultimo nostro raduno è stato a giugno a Firenze, una lunga estate che adesso volge al termine. Vi aspettiamo con la corona del Rosario in mano, noi il popolo dei rosarianti, a Milano domenica 6 ottobre, prima domenica del mese dedicato alla Madonna del Rosario. Reciteremo insieme il Rosario, accoglieremo la statua della Madonna, benediremo tutti i bambini e faremo la consacrazione alla Madonna e la recita della supplica alla Madonna del Rosario di Pompei. Domenica 6 ottobre, Milano, avanti con Maria e a presto.
Praise be Jesus Christ, and onward with Mary. Good and holy day to all of you, my dear children, in the sacred hearts of Jesus and Mary, and in the most chaste heart of Saint Joseph. Welcome back to our morning segment, Saints and Coffee. Oggi è martedì 1 ottobre. Nel calendario liturgico tradizionale si celebra la commemorazione di San Remigio. Start this month dedicated to the Rosary. 2 months are particularly linked to the Rosary, one more of a devotional nature, let's say, thanks especially to the efforts of Blessed Bartolo Bartolo, and that is the month of May. And then from ancient tradition, the month of October, which is the one that begins today. It's an important month for us. Last year, on the 7th of October, we met in Bologna for an unforgettable gathering. I always ask my team, they don't listen to me anymore either, to show the images of the gatherings more often because they annoy the enemies. These images are alarming, shocking, and unsettling, because if Don Minutella is just a solitary storyteller, that's one thing. But if Don Minutella, who doesn't exist in the mainstream except to be attacked, receives this response, then everything changes. On the 7th of October last year, we met in Bologna for an important gathering on the occasion of the first phase of the Synod on Synodality, the Cursed Synod of Satan, which is now in its second phase. 5 days remain until the meeting in Milan. It's not a gathering like the one in Bologna, I said it right from the start. And indeed, many who came to Bologna last year from the south and the islands won't be able to attend. But it's a prayer meeting, equally a response in prayer. Images speak, why ignore them? Why does Italian journalism underestimate this event, even from an informational perspective? There, first of all, you see the seized ones. Why, oh why, dear children, don't they talk about it? Thousands of people, this is the Bologna Fair. These are images up to the last meeting we had in Florence last June. Perhaps we also have images of that somewhere in the archive. And indeed in June 9th, I believe it was, we met in Florence at the sports hall, 4,000 seats. Some seats were still empty, vacant, but the hall filled up. Why? Us? Why don't they talk about us? Because generally, the left talks about the right to discuss the political agenda, and the right talks about the left. Strickland and Schneider talk about Bergoglio, and Bergoglio talks about the Catholic traditionalists. Everyone talks about others, but about Don Minutella, the small remnant, and the fellowship, not a word. This alone should make one think. Here these are images, also truly touching. Look at the wonder of the sports hall, thousands of faithful, from all over Italy and beyond. Repeat these images, mainstream ignores them. And even that so-called Catholic mainstream for which we don't exist. And this is an ideological short circuit, because after all, information requires that it be said. All right, let's get ready for this meeting in Milan. I am already on my way to Milan and have left southern Italy. Puglia, the beautiful land of Salento, where 2 days ago, in no time at all, we organized a prayer meeting that had an amazing turnout. About 150 people gathered in no time at all. While I, scrolling through the social media and Facebook of the dioceses, see the meetings that bishops hold in parishes with months of preparation. And then if the marshal of the Carabinieri barracks, the mayor with his family, the church, the sacristan don't attend. The church is practically empty, with just the bishop and the grandchildren. This is a fact, aside from the folkloric festivals of the patron saint, etc. We are getting ready for this meeting in Milan. I hope all of you from the north respond appropriately, because it's important to be there. Praying will be a moment of prayer and a testimony of our Catholic faith in the face of the advance of the false church of darkness, which is preparing. As today, we will also discuss launching the attack through the second phase of the Synod, and there will be confession. There will be confessions because the entire fellowship will be present. It doesn't take much to ensure that all the priests are present. So from 10:30 to 12:30, we priests will be there for confessions. Then in the afternoon, attention, we will make it known at the entrance, wherever we are, that we are excommunicated priests, reduced to the lay state by the one we recognize as Pope. So those of you who come must know. I don't know if you heard I've been laicized because today truth-tellers end up like this, Bergoglio isn't the Pope, etc. If you want to confess to me, it's your loss. And then in the afternoon at 2:30, this beautiful prayer meeting begins. On the occasion of the first Sunday of October, which is dedicated to Our Lady of the Rosary of Pompeii, with the supplication. 2:30, we will welcome the statue of Our Lady of Fatima, the pilgrim, who has accompanied me since the first time. Then we will recite the Rosary, renew the consecration to the Madonna, solemnly recite the supplication to Our Lady of the Rosary of Pompeii, and then bless all the children from 0 to 12 years old. One by one, the children will be blessed by us priests, and we will give them a very simple keepsake. However, we want to ask the parents to tell them to carry these keepsakes with them throughout their lives, because one day all of this will become part of history, I'm sure of it. And then there will be the Holy Mass celebrated by Father Johannes and the homily by Don Enrico, and after the Mass, Brother Celestino will lead a Eucharistic procession and the final blessing, and then we will say our goodbyes. With the blessing of the sacramentals, bring them yourselves, oil, water, salt, incense, etc., the sacramentals that protect us from the forces of the sea. This then in 5 days, the countdown has begun, the countdown, and so we prepare for this occasion solemn and important. After the summer break that saw us as protagonists of a relentless resistance, they acquired Little Nazareth, and now we are trying to rebuild. In this regard, I urge you to support us if possible, for the sake of speed, not for anything else, to allocate your contribution to the postal current account, because the bank account takes more time. And this is the IBAN, the new IBAN. We continue with the IBAN and the bank IBAN. But if you could, it would be better to help us, because the availability is quicker with the postal current account. Here it is, 10,717,676,189. I remind you that in Milan, booking a room and paying for it costs a fiat. For clarity, if you don't help us, the project can't move forward. Please keep that in mind then. Today is Tuesday, so tonight there's the Warlike Tuesday. I can't wait for you to watch tonight's episode at 9 o'clock for the Warlike Tuesday from my book, The False Church and Its Destiny, which will be available this Sunday during this prayer meeting in Milan. I present my 2 new editorial works. Here it is. The first, The False Church and Its Destiny, the book first published in December 2017 by Faith and Culture, and today we publish it with Gamba Editore. False Church and Its Fate, Christ, Michelangelesque, the prophetic book of 2017 we discuss Tuesday nights. The other book we are presenting on Sunday is the first volume of commentary on the Gospel of John, the first 5 chapters, The Eagle and the Sun, commentary on the Gospel of John. The eagle is John, who can contemplate the Logos of God, which is Jesus Christ and the Son. Here, these are the two books available on Sunday in Milan. This evening, for the occasion of War Tuesday, we are addressing a crucial topic that I discuss in my book, and which I will summarize for you. There it is, because Bergoglio's false church attacks the Madonna. Watch out, this is crucial. This evening, we will explain whether it is true that this Church of Darkness, led by Bergoglio, attacks the Madonna, and above all, why it does so. Don't miss tonight's episode. Review the post. Share at 9 o'clock on the YouTube channel of Radio Dominutella Nostra. Always give a like and subscribe if you haven't done so, because the false church of Bergoglio attacks the Madonna. It's the 6th episode from my book, available as I mentioned next Sunday, The False Church and Its Destiny. And then I remind you that tomorrow evening there's Brother Celestino with the Biblical Wednesday on the occasion of the Gospel of the 20th Sunday after Pentecost. So that's a bit of the program I was saying. So I'll see you tonight at 9 o'clock for the War Tuesday. Spread the word. The community should get involved. I wanted to tell you two things before discussing today's topic. At first, in Lecce, there were some new people, meaning they have been following Radio Domina Nostra for not even a couple of months. One of these people, a woman from the southern province of Lecce, told me, "Father, I didn't know you, because I don't follow social media much." A devout woman repeatedly spoke to me about you, saying even just so she wouldn't bother me anymore. And because, moreover, she said she was embarrassed because she didn't know what to say to you. So she decided to connect, and you were holding a session, and she said she was struck, So it's important that all of you do your part. She said she was struck because she said she couldn't even imagine these things, and as you spoke, she saw the reasonableness of your argument, Father. I mean, she saw that it wasn't just her saying it. She told me she didn't know you, so she didn't even know anything about the persecution you were facing. She discovered it later, and that convinced her even more, perhaps. Because she said the first time she listened to you, she didn't know exactly what the topic was, but she said she listened to these things and found the reasonableness of your argument. Because she said she is a Catholic person of average education, she realized that you, Father, were right. So you see how crucial it is to spread the word. Look at how Brother Celestino tells it to anyone, causing us quite a few problems around Italy. Sooner or later, there won't be any hotel available to host us, but he hasn't understood this yet. Or maybe he has, and he'd like me to sleep under a bridge sometimes. You see, there are those Bergoglians, and then I make the film, not beating around the bush. No, she's with Bergoglio. That's the typical phrase. But you can all do your part, dear lay people of the small remnant. I must tell you that a good part of the small remnant is completely passive, I must say. They receive the morsels and feed like canaries in a cage, eating everything the master brings them. Instead, you must fly. There is no cage. You must fly in virtual spaces, open channels, and engage in social networks. Create Facebook profiles and say that Bergoglio is not the Pope. Tell the truth. Share it with everyone, because there's a shared responsibility you can't ignore. This is the first thing I wanted to say, because I was struck by the fact that there were also new people who, upon learning about the existence of others from the beginning, went to check just to avoid looking foolish, and found that there is indeed a reasonableness. Others maybe not. However, you see, you cast the bait, and thank God for people with a conscience, because last Sunday, if you were able to follow Father Celestino's homily in Lecce, it was clarified that the small remnant is not at all a political movement, and therefore not even ecclesiastical. and it is not an association. We are not an association. There is no need for a statute. We are the Catholic Church. This is important when this is like a river that flows at a certain point into the open sea. That is, when this incredible Bergoglian imposture of the false church ends, hopefully as soon as possible. But I believe the race will not be so swift. But when it ends, the small remnant will no longer exist. The Catholic Church will continue to exist because we, the small remnant, the little flock, are the ones keeping the lamp alight. Come to Milan. I urge you, don't miss out from Veneto, Emilia-Romagna, Tuscany, Liguria, Piedmont, Valle d'Aosta, Trentino, Friuli, all of Central North, Marche. Come to Milan. I remind you that there are 3 coaches available. I don't know their status, but you can call the Radio Domina Nostra office for further information. This is the first thing, hence the shared responsibility of announcing the truth. The second thing I wanted to say is that most of the time during these meetings I hold around, I've now chosen Saturday and Sunday. On weekdays, we focus on reading books, writing, praying, whatever you like. Because it's clear that these are working days. And in Lecce, having chosen to hold the meeting on a Sunday, a worker came to thank us for this, because indeed on weekdays he wouldn't have been able to come. At this point, I want to send a greeting to all the workers of the small remainder who toil away. I am someone who really loves the heat. So now that, slowly, gradually, my body, I don't know if yours feels it, we're heading towards the cold season. Maybe it's because I suffer from the cold. I think of the workers on the street, the sanitation workers, the builders, to the construction sites, to those who work on the streets, these markets held outdoors in winter, etc., etc. I was also thinking mainly about the fishermen this morning. The fishermen do one of the jobs. Indeed, there are no women who go fishing, nor who build so far as I know. Builders of buildings. Typically male jobs, they require sacrifice, physical effort, yet women can do them too. Different aspects. So do fishermen stop working in winter? They work. They learn to study the sea. If you ever look at human history, it's commonly human history. It's a shame there was the original catch. Really a shame. What do fishermen do? They learn to read, you see, like on a computer, their friend the sea. But they know it's a friend that can always betray them, the sea. So they always wait to go out to the open sea at night to fish, because then early in the morning, they set off at 4, in the middle of winter. Imagine what that means. They have to sell the fish to large shopping centers and so on. A fisherman returns home practically exhausted, then the workers, but also those who work in... Sorry, today I wanted to say this to make it clear that even though unfortunately we are dealing with scoundrels trying to Gnosticize the church, all right, a true pastor, when he is such, adheres to reality, does not lose sight of reality. What do you want? I now have to return to speaking about the synod, but I do not give up on reality. I look at it, I observe it, I make it my own and transfigure it in prayer. So, to put it simply, today I wanted to dedicate it to all the workers. The work sanctifies us, work ennobles us, work purifies us from sin and keeps us focused away from sin. I was saying, I also think about the workers inside the offices. Now, just because there's the fisherman, the bricklayer, and the construction worker, the work done by an office employee in front of the computer is not less problematic. In fact, many times it's more tiring. You see, everyone knows the burden they carry in the morning. At night, I think of those who work at night, like night watchmen. There are also many night jobs, and so on. And if there's no faith, work dehumanizes you, makes you cynical, makes you cruel to yourself. If there is faith in the perspective of faith, work does not become an idolatry simply for earning, but it is also a path to sanctification. From Lecce, I wanted to say these two things. The first, that you all may collaborate to spread the truth that Bergoglio is not the Pope, and that there is a false Pope in Rome. As Cianci said in recent days, it's painful to see Mozio Schneider once again insisting that Bergoglio, I think I mentioned it yesterday, says that Bergoglio is clearly an apostate, yet he is the Pope. They toss these lines, but he's the Pope. Worse for him. And the second thing, a well-deserved tribute to all the workers of the small remainder and in general. Let's start today's episode. Here now we need the title, The Synod of Babel or Babylon. Everything is ready. This is today's title. All right, as you know, we're almost at the end. I mean, the theater is about to start. The comedy is about to begin. Prepare yourselves, sit comfortably, because the curtain is reopening once again. The curtain had closed last year during the first phase of the Synod in October 2023, when afterwards the infamous and cursed document was published, because not only does God not bless that document, I speak of trust implored. He curses it, God curses. The point is that the curse comes. It's not just a trivial thing. It's not that God curses it. If you read the Gospel, it's written in the Gospel that there are those who, even in the small remnant, are upset that Don Minutella says these things. The curse exists. To curse, to speak ill, means that God sterilizes or makes barren. The work carried out by the enemies of the cross, by the enemies of the gospel. The Synod is certainly a barren work, cursed by God. Trustingly pleading, do you want it to have God's blessing, the one written by Fernandez and signed by Bergoglio, which authorizes nothing less than the blessing of gay couples? And here we are still debating whether he is the Pope. Perhaps it was precisely that document that should have made the difference. And yet, unfortunately, it is foreseen by heaven that things must continue this way. Last year they held this first synod. No one complained. We saw these tables, round tables with King Arthur in the center, and then these tables in the Nervi Hall, which many believed had a sort of Masonic scenography. I'm not an expert on this, but it's possible. Gave an impression of confusion, a real Babel-like one, as is typical of Bergoglio. If you compare these images of the round tables with 8, the number 8 is also interesting. If you compare these images of the Synod, until the Synod took place before this staging in the Synodal Hall, with the Pope seated at the central bank, to the cardinal rapporteurs, and in front of all the synodal fathers. This idea has been around since last year. If you compare this with Pachamama, with the images of Pachamama, you'll notice we're there. They give the impression of confusion, giving the idea of chaos or Babylon, as we will now see. There is no order, no harmony, because the devil is present. This is the first thing that closed that phase. Then there was a lot of talk, and finally, let's say the spotlight went out. I told you in the middle of summer, remember, while I was moving rocks and getting dusty in Little Nazareth, and I said, you'll see they do it on purpose, and then suddenly the whole thing will explode again. There is already a backstory, for me arranged on purpose, which is the protest in Belgium against poor Pope Francis regarding the ordination of women. Papa Francesco was challenged because the students in Leuven, which is one of the once prestigious theological universities in Belgium, you see that this was challenged because they asked him, why you still haven't decided to bring women to the altar. Because this, pay attention to the word discrimination. But what does the word discrimination have to do with it? Which is a sociological concept, a sociocultural concept with the theological issue of a foundational will of Christ, who certainly was not influenced by the environment. What does discrimination, which is a sociocultural anthropological category have to do with the theological concepts of the norm, Norman's non-normata, of the foundational will of Christ and the apostolic tradition. All nonsense and rubbish, as we say where I'm from, yes. We are no longer in the presence of the Catholic Church, but the false church of Bergoglio is a vegetable patch, where you can choose. You find the pumpkin, you find the fennel, you find the watermelon. There you find everything you want. Because if anyone in Rome had a bit of intelligence among these bishops, theologians, canonists, to reflect, as Don Minutella is saying, the thing that has nothing to do with it is the category of discrimination against women, for the fact that they are not another part, the fact that women are not at all discriminated against. This would have already been said, because the idea that by going up to the altar discrimination ends was the same as saying that women wearing jeans and working in factories becoming like men were no longer discriminated against. It's really so. It was worse. It was much. Women were even more discriminated against. Dear women, I defend you. Incredible. It may be that in this mission that God has entrusted to me one of the priorities, because my daughters and the women who stand by me, starting from those who have been sequestered, tell me, is a grace from God that opens my eyes. Are you not in agreement with me, you of the small remnant, that in the 1960s, just after the 1960s, early 1970s, this rush towards the factories, this taking to the streets of Italy with my womb is mine and I manage it, and then the issue of contraception and abortion developed, and women finally wore jeans, trousers, like men. But are you kidding? Women become masculinized and thus are no longer discriminated against. The deception of 68, and indeed it has satanic origins. There is none, for me. The women's issue never truly existed, because it was deliberately handled the wrong way. Think women aren't discriminated and become like men. She's become like him. We've talked about this. How can a woman give up? Women know if I'm telling the truth. How can a woman give up the realm of love, of feeling, of the heart, of eyes that gaze, of the heart that loves? Christ, it's a record compared to man. The sap, first and foremost, is touched and experienced by the woman. As roots, like roots, feel the contact with the earth, the roots, the humus, the womb. You get it? And then the tree receives this sap, which, however, passes through what is underneath, and the woman is there, knowing what the humus of life is, because she carries it within her, it blooms within her, yet she had to go to work. I say this is a great victory for women, because a woman who has entered forensic fields as a lawyer or jurist, a woman who has entered the business world, a woman who has entered a factory, has brought a contribution of intelligence, wisdom, and heart that men do not have. Because men generally make environments metallic, the workplaces men create are self-destructive. I'll tell you why. Because men go to work and it's everyone against everyone, you know? It's a race for ambition, a mutual destruction. It's the pack syndrome where you always have to see who truly deserves to be the pack leader. The woman arrives and all can change, but the cost was very high. There is already a deception with the theme of discrimination against women in the 1970s. Now you see that even back then, this sociological and anthropological idea was that women are discriminated against. But why are they discriminated against? Because they had to be silenced, because they don't wear trousers, don't swear, don't blaspheme, don't drink grappa. But why are women discriminated against? Because they stay at home. Perhaps even the woman who stays at home is discriminated against by the man who takes the boat out at 3 a.m. to fish. These things really, look, there's a truly satanic deception that's been going on for too many years. Now this category has been insisting for years, but John Paul II and Benedict XVI prevented this, let's say, idea that if a woman is discriminated against because she doesn't ascend to the altar, we ordain her as a deaconess, then a priestess, then a bishopess, and eventually even a popess, which recently in Italy has been quite the dilemma. Here, this is the idea of discriminating. Pope Francis was the victim of this unplanned provocation. Do you think it wasn't planned? Who are they trying to fool? I won't allow it. Do they want to deceive me that this provocation wasn't planned? Yes, it was planned. Because the script of the comedy foresees that Pope Francis is not responsible for the choice. He undergoes it and will be forced, if it's still him who has to do it, to accept that women are ordained along with it. And you see, they ask us, it is the young theology students who ask us. If instead the Pope, who for years has played the victim, the Pope has shown us how pained he is to hear those things, but look how well he can act. I assure you that Toto pales in comparison, and look, I'm serious. What I say is not a joke. He had to act the script there because he was told, or maybe he even invested himself, that he was sorry that the students of ideology in Belgium they ask coincidentally in Belgium, they ask for the ordination of deaconesses, and then Pope Francis defended. But excuse me, isn't he the same one who told Cardinal Burke and the other cardinals? Yes, it's true that John Paul II said, but isn't it full schizophrenia? How is it possible that he doesn't want deaconess women? But no one notices. It's a kind of frightening hypnosis. Terrifying. But wasn't Pope Francis the one who had written, when the 5 cardinals asked Pope Francis, we heard about it last year, I told you about all these things, I keep you updated. They had written to Pope Francis, listen, but you said the synod will have to do this, we'll have to do that. What do you say? And they presented 5 doubts. Then Pope Francis replied to them saying, why did they back out? Worse for them. Anyway, they said, you want the ordination of women, quite clearly. This response from Pope Francis is true that John Paul II, however, we will work because it's not said that it can't be done. They wondered how it was possible that now he was saddened in Belgium if he wrote to the cardinals that it should be done, the fact that there wasn't a program called Sgarbi Daily. I followed it. Returning from high school, practically after the TG5, Channel 5, every day around 1:30. I think it was around that time, 1:45 in the afternoon, Vittorio Sgarbi hosted a short talk show where he shared his thoughts. All right, they should grant Don Minutella this program. Of course, they'll never allow it, but I'm not doing it to flatter you because I know it's plain. See, it's something no one has mentioned. But how is it possible that Pope Francis in Belgium appears saddened because they show him the discrimination against women? He, though, told cardinals that now he's going around saying he doesn't want the indexing of women. If he wrote that to cardinals, why doesn't he want them? All right, he should have said that with the cardinals. It's not even up for discussion. He's right, John Paul II, who stated once and for all that women cannot be ordained. Deaconesses. Why is that? In today's episode, as you can see, I'm not really reflecting on the content, but on the method, which is a method of deception, a deceitful method, a Luciferian method, because it aims precisely at mocking consciences. How come, I repeat, Pope Francis has been saying for a while that he doesn't want women deaconesses, yet to the cardinals with doubts who ask him about this, he seems, how shall I say, open to change. All right, can you explain it to me? I explain it to you by saying he's a deceiver. I explain it by saying this is a method. Clearly, if it's not pathological schizophrenia, it's a deception. I'm sorry. I would like you to reflect on this. If it's not schizophrenia, it's pathology. It's a truly immoral act. Bergoglio is mocking. Naturally, first of all, just so you know, he's mocking himself. That's evident, that's clear. As Judas Iscariot did, if you read Maria Valtorta, it becomes very clear that Judas, like all those who eventually give themselves over to evil, ultimately, they end up only deceiving themselves in their own conscience. It's bad to mock your conscience, to stay in wrong. Bergoglio should know, you all know that he can't, thank God, deceive everyone. There's a small group that will be seen on Sunday in Milan, which bears witness. And it's no coincidence that the media don't mention it, because the media must idolize Pope Francis, who doesn't get fooled. From this Italian comedy, we are witnessing. Now poor Pope Francis, who returned distressed from Belgium because he was criticized regarding the discrimination of women in the church. And I repeat, the category of anthropological and sociological discrimination is not theological, because from a theological point of view, something Bergoglio did not say. Interesting that he didn't say it. The foundational will of Christ requires that only male men serve as sacred ministers at the altar in the 3 degrees of the sacrament of orders. Well, there's more to say here anyway. Males and males, yes. All right, so then, however, Pope Francis should have said there is a foundational will of Christ. There is a 2,000-year apostolic tradition. There is a norm that is not to be discussed. Instead, here we are. He skirted around it, showed regret, said that women should not be ordained, but that women in the church must have their role. Now, however, poor Pope Francis, notice how the comedy will continue. I'll announce it to you, and then you'll say, wow, he's always right. My teachers at school hated me already then. They always thought I was right. And you'll see I'm right about this too. So now the comedy continues like this in the coming days, in the coming weeks. As Pope Francis is filled with this provocation, sorrowful, says he no longer sleeps, no longer eats. He's sorrowful. Why is he sorrowful? He is distressed because there is the synod. And at the synod, once again, as already with Bergoglio, the bishops present, the theologians, the female theologians, the professors, the nuns, and all those who are there, the bishops, the synodal fathers, I recommend them all to you. Again, we will witness what happened last year. You commented on the spiritual introductions of Father Timothy Radcliffe. Do you remember them? I don't know if I am a man. I don't know if I am white. I don't know if I am for sale. He said, I don't know if I am white. I don't know if I am black. I don't know if I am a man. Christ, these are the introductions. So then Pope Francis, the guardian of the Catholic faith, like John Paul II and Benedict XVI, Pope Francis, who is not a heretic, is apostate, who is not a blasphemer, master builder of the Church of Satan, arrives there, sits at King Arthur's table, and they start telling him, you must make women deaconesses, as we are in Rome. And poor Pope Francis, in the end, will have to consent. You see what the trick is. It's not because they've studied well. Those damned Freemasons who are in there know that the Pope can't do it. They know. So if they know the Pope can't do it, they must have studied the tactic. It's what they're putting into play. It's a tactic from their father, Satan. With deceit, they'll make it seem like this demand to bring women to the altar comes from the grassroots. It's not the Pope, it's that the Pope accepts with reservations. They will write a document stating that the blessings for gay couples must be done in 10 to 15 seconds. No one has observed or observes this ridiculous, mocking choice. They are no longer blessings. They are also matrimonial and specific to different regions of the world. You will see that over time, not immediately, with the time they take, a document will emerge in which poor Pope Francis compelled from below, as the Spirit invites us to listen to the periphery, those things there, right? Since there is the sense of the faithful, and then there's the pastoral emergency, because as the Pope will say, I saw it in Indonesia and in Papua New Guinea, and so we might propose as an experiment the path of women ascending to the altar. They said the first degree of holy orders is not the Pope and the people, and the revolution, gentlemen, understand, is the revolution of the Church, my dear gentlemen, a revolution willed by the devil, because the aim is to change the face of Roman Catholicism, because in the end, This affair, in the global situation we find ourselves in, look also at how false this church is. Let me make you understand, today's catechesis is important. They're all somewhat important, these on the site. Let me make you reflect. Imagine, right, this type of situation. Follow me closely to understand what surreal situation the false church is living in. Because then those who are not of Christ lose touch with reality. So imagine there's a condominium that catches fire, not a building, but villas all within a residence. And right in the center of the villa square, a fire develops. The fire slowly spreads. The administrator, informed in time, then contacts the condominium president and says, "Gentlemen, at 3 o'clock we meet." Meanwhile, the fire is burning everything. It started at noon. At 3 o'clock we meet to discuss whether you can park, let's say, bicycles in front of the house. And I will tell you the same thing, because world's burning. Last night, I, as rarely happens, was able to watch the news really well, something I hadn't done in years. First Rai 1 and then Rai 2. I followed as the first news this decision by Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, to also attack by land, so total war, Lebanon. Now, the second Hezbollah leader has said they are ready for war against Israel. And even Netanyahu has addressed the Iranians, certainly, saying, look, if they have a situation, I don't know if he was addressing the Iranians or those in Iran, telling them, we will come to liberate you from the dictatorship, from the regime. As you know, for the Israelis, there is a regime. We will come to liberate you. Iranian citizens, prepare yourselves. So these are proclamations of a total war. While there is this situation in the Middle East, the world is in an open, clear economic recession. There is a crisis, especially in the West, meaning that the world is in open, which is the ethical disorientation of contemporary man. The religious sense is completely eclipsed. What does the false church do? She's worried about whether women can ascend to the altar and bless gay couples. What's more grotesque than this? Tell me then, what could be more grotesque than this? A church that spends, because I remind you to avoid misunderstandings, that since there are those from the renewal who count their money, if they get it right, good for them. If they don't ask for forgiveness, they end up in hell, because slander is a very serious sin that requires repentance. While they count my money when I don't have any, thank God. And those around me know that I don't keep money in my pocket except to go get a coffee. I don't know, buying a newspaper, enjoying a drink, but I don't keep money in my pocket. Thank God, thank God. I was telling you how much they spend, what the spending budget is, the investment for this synod, for this second phase. Poor Pope Francis is informed. He knows nothing about the cost, or pretends not to, the costs that the second phase entails. Why does it cost so much to have two phases? Costs so much. Why not invest this money to truly help the poor? Give us help from the false church. All right, and these synodal fathers gather there while it's possible that in the meantime the Third World War might break out. Because if Israel and Iran go to war, dear children, it's the Third World War. That's how I see it. I don't know. If Israel, as it seems, says, we're coming to liberate you, dear Iranian citizens, from the regime that oppresses you, it's total war. It's total war, dear children. So while the world is in crisis, there's total ethical and moral confusion. There's an eclipse of religious sense like never before. There's a need for a renewed proclamation of the gospel, of what Jesus Christ said. There's Satan in the Vatican planning another gospel and another church. The apocalypse is the apocalypse. Make yourselves comfortable, because those like Brother Celestino, who, as I understand, expect some sort of escalation that finally, one way or another, with good or bad intentions, as we say in my area, will put an end to this horrible and horrific spectacle. Make yourselves comfortable, because I think it won't be like that. I believe that, as the Apocalypse clearly states, which we have once again taken up and resumed commenting on Thursday evenings, as the Apocalypse says, the deployment of the forces of evil must continue to the very end. The abscess in the mouth must burst and then implode on itself. Quindi there's a world on fire, a lost society, a contemporary man. We look at our young people, depressed and without religious sense, and meanwhile in Rome they build another church. As blessed Caterina Emmerich says, the synod is the very expression. It's the geometric quintessence, the geometric exposition of this satanic architecture that Bergoglio is managing to carry forward. We dissociate, thank God, because next Sunday, just like last year in Bologna, we are in Milan to say no, because we will never accept belonging to this false church of darkness, and we increasingly feel sorry because we pity the unicum. Even today, I saw an article by Professor Stefano Fontana criticizing the upcoming synod on the New Daily Compass. He criticizes it too, yet Pope Francis here, Pope Francis there. Worse for you who do not want to see the truth to the end. Well, my dear ones, now we can move on to the phone calls. I thank the team here. We can read precisely because I did not have time to prepare it. Bergoglio's response to the fourth dubium, the one on female ordination. He cites John Paul II, but the letter writes to us, on the other hand, to be rigorous. We recognize that a clear and authoritative doctrine on the exact nature of a definitive declaration has not yet been exhaustively developed. It's not a dogmatic definition, yet it must be accepted by everyone. Nobody can publicly contradict it, however. It can be a subject of study, as in the case of the validity of ordinations in the Anglican Communion. As you can see, Bergoglio is schizophrenic, no, deceptive, yes, completely, who in Belgium laments, as the Synod will do, because they insist on the action of deaconesses, but in the meantime writes to the cardinals that he agrees on the possibility of opening up to the action of deaconesses. Be careful, dear children. Don Minutella is here to help you. See you on Sunday in Milan, meanwhile. Let's answer a couple of phone calls. Tonight at 9, remember the war catechesis, as demanding as the morning one, even if I'm fresher then, since Bergoglio's false church attacks the Madonna. This is the post. Share, 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 chat. Be chatterboxes with others. To shout the truth.